Hello, I am Xiomara Bernard. I am an actor, filmmaker, and I am also the daughter of a former political prisoner. Entra a la casa, vamos a disfrutar la comida, frijoles negros, arroz blanco. ¡Woo! Vamos a llamar a Changó y a Maya todos los Espíritus Santos. ¡Babalú! ¡Babalú!
36 for 36 is brought to you by The Late Night Experiment with Motown Maurice. Subscribe today on YouTube.
I was actually born in Philadelphia. I was born and raised there. I lived in Somerset Street. It's kind of the ghetto of Philadelphia. I didn't really have a lot of friends. I was pretty much sheltered by my family. Being number 7, I'm actually the youngest child of my family. So I have 6 brothers and sisters. All of them were actually born in Cuba. My brothers and sisters, along with my mom, were part of the Freedom Flight, and my dad was part of the Jimmy Carter exchange, prisoner exchange. They were pretty much separated for 10 years from each other, and that's why I was the only one born in the States. One night in the month of May of 1969 was a night that my parents sometimes really don't go into because that was the night before they had to be separated for the next 10 years. My mom and my brothers and sisters, as I mentioned before, they were approved for the Freedom Flight. My father, unfortunately, had to be left behind because, he wasn't approved. And the reason why he was not approved was because he was a young man in his 20s with military skills, and he also had members of the Communist Party within his family who were pretty much keeping an eye on him. They experienced a lot of hardships with a lot of labor work that they had to do for no pay, which my dad took double work for. And there was also situations with the lack of food. My mom spoke about how the night before she left on the flight, how they cut off the food program. It's pretty much like food stamps here. They did not allow any more food stamps to come to her house because she was leaving. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. And during that time, 1969, I'm hoping that they changed it. They pretty much cut milk from kids who were 2 years old and older, so only the kids who were younger than 2 were allowed to have milk. They would receive rotted meat, rotted food, and so there was a lot of the times they got food poisoning. So my parents, knowing the grave situation that was happening with that hostile country, they agreed that it was best for them to leave. Even though my father knew he was going to be left behind, he wanted to make sure that my mother, as well as my brothers and sisters, were safe. So that was their main priority. Several times he tried to escape Cuba. Unfortunately, he was caught every time, and by the 3rd time he was turned in by family members, and he was put in prison for the next 10 years. What saved my father from a lifetime of prison was the Jimmy Carter prisoner exchange. That allowed him to leave that life behind and arrive to the United States. And then a year later, I was born. 3 years old. 3 years old was the age where the world of imagination was present to me. It was omnipresent all around me. I was surrounded by it. I lived it. I breathed it. It was my world. I knew I was fascinated about acting since I was a kid, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of that world where when my sister would get together with me, we would play games. I would play with Little Miss Piggy, Kermit the Frog, the Jason Priestley doll from 90210. You're like, what in the heck? And I just would have fun playing these amazing characters. Even though I didn't know what it was, And by the time I got to the second grade, my other sister talked to me about a career existing with imagination, and I was like, that's it. That's my career. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. That's it. Bienvenido a la casa, todo mundo. Échate para adelante que vamos a comer la comida. Disfrute, disfrute todo. Échale. If you look up Hogwarts, like the different houses, you see me in Slytherin because I'm a very ambitious person, and I've been ambitious in high school where I was involved in theater. I loved taking drama classes, and because my parents said you pretty much didn't put me in theater. They're like, oh, you know, they don't allow till you're like 18 years old, and meanwhile I'm seeing all these kids on television shows, and I'm like, what in the world? So they didn't know if I was taken seriously or not. It was a serious matter. Since I was 3 years old, I'm like, I'm gonna get that acting gig. So I took theater classes with an amazing teacher, Miss B. I've taken it. I went to different high schools because my family moved around several times. And by the time I got to college, I started taking theater analysis, acting 1, acting 2, theater production, management. I took everything that I could learn about the industry, and I started doing community theater outside of school as well. So I just expanded all out, going to auditions every single week. Sometimes I would lose sleep, stay up till like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning to get up at 5 or 6 a.m. the next day, but I was cool with it. Así, frijoles negros! One day in college, while I was doing a lot of theater around town, a friend of mine, V, actually inspired me to do a documentary based on my father's life. So as my father was very gracious, he was actually very open to share his experiences. And while he was in prison in Cuba during those 10 years, he experienced a lot of trials and tribulations. He was beaten up, tortured. He had ropes tied around his ankles while the truck would drag him down the street. It was really terrible, and he had beer bottles being broken on his skin. There was a few times where for bad behavior he would be put in a solitary confinement box. He wouldn't be allowed to go to the bathroom, and if he did, he had to go to the bathroom right there. And so it was really horrible of what he went through. But we got to finish the documentary. It was really wonderful. Unfortunately, through my transitional period that I was going through while I was trying to settle myself here in California, I lost the documentary. However, I do plan to make a short film called The List, and it's based on the last night that my parents were together before they were separated for the next 10 years. I do plan to make a feature film on my family's life. I'm going to say 3 to 5 years from now, but for now I'm working on The List, which will be ready very soon. I recently started a production company called Theophilus Films with my partners Allison and Aaron, and we are getting ready to embark on amazing, beautiful projects. Our motto is to treasure life and to embrace self-empowerment, and I'm really, really excited about it. I first made my debut on season 4, The Late Night Experiment Law of Attraction episode. Now, the Law of Attraction took Motown Maurice to court. I was a reporter reporting the events. Now, I was not sure because this was scripted, but it was intense. I did not know if Motown was going to go to jail for the rest of his life, but it was intense. However, it was such a fun shoot, and I wouldn't mind doing it again. It's really fun. You have to check it out.
Thank you, Team LOA. I am Xiomara Ortiz, live on the scene for Channel 5 News. We're now going to return you back to the case where it's already in session.
Law of attraction! Law of attraction! Law of attraction! Law of attraction! Yeah! Yeah!
On behalf of Channel 5 News, you need to watch The Late Night Experiment. It is fun, it is intense, it is such an adventure, and I swear, it is so good that I'm gonna say it in Spanish. Hay que aprovechar el canal de Motown Maurice, porque si no, la ley de la universa te va a comer. Law of attraction will get you otherwise.
Take a glimpse into Motown Maurice's future with 6 seasons, 36 episodes, plus 6 behind-the-scenes documentaries of The Late Night Experiment. Subscribe and like us today.